So this is a Patreon request from Lucas and Morcigo. I feel like I pronounced your name wrong. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. And they requested me to watch The Island of Dr. Moreau from 1996, starring Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer. You know what, had a time watching this movie, and I didn't understand why it got such a bad review until I watched the trailer, and then I was like, oh, that makes sense. Now in this episode of Movie Breakdowns, I'm going to talk about it. What's up, world? Welcome to another episode of Movie Breakdowns. I'm your host, Ali Zakka. And before I get started, is there a review you want me to do? Let me know. Please put in the comment section below and I'll get to it as best I can. Also the Patreon.com/Ali Zakka. And for $2 a month, you get the cut in front of everybody, get your review out way before it come out on Facebook and YouTube. Also, you get other things like on there like comments, content, trailer reactions, trailer reviews, and much more stuff that gets put on the Patreon that you always only get to see on the YouTube channel. Now, let's go and get into today's episode of 1996, The Island of Dr. Moreau. And this is a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen this movie, go watch it and then come back to this review. But what is this movie about? Well, this movie is about a guy who gets found at sea. He gets put onto this island, which is ran by this guy named Dr. Moreau. And while he's on this island, he comes across beast-like creatures / humanoid people who are trying to live out their life, but at the same time, things get a little haywire with the beast human-like people and Dr. Moreau. That is pretty much the gist of this movie. And when I got done watching this movie, I found myself chuckling, laughing, having a good time, like enjoyed the main parts of the story. But I couldn't figure why the reaction to this movie is so bad. Like IMDb gives this movie a 4.5 out of 10. And Rotten Tomatoes gives this movie, and this is not just the critics on Rotten Tomatoes, but the audience as well. The critics give it a 23%, and the audience give it a 20%. And I was like, this movie isn't that bad. Like, it has some horrible parts, but it also has some good parts. Like, I found myself like involved in the story, and I was like, I'm kind of curious where this movie's going to go. I'm curious to see how this movie plays out. And the story for me, the main story drove this movie for me to be like, I enjoyed this movie. And maybe because I saw the Rotten Tomatoes score and IMDb score before I saw the movie, so I automatically assumed the movie is going to be hot garbage. And it's not. This movie has a solid cast of people I love. I love David Thewlis. I love, he plays not Mandalorian, he played Jango Fett. Now I'm forgetting his name right now. And his name is there, and I just lost his name. Ron Perlman's in this movie, which I was like, oh, Ron Perlman. Oh, Tamura Morrison. So, like, there's people in this movie that I enjoy, and I've seen in other movies that I'm like, this movie cast is solid. Like, Marlon Brando, Val Kilmer, like, this is a solid cast. But the writing also hurt this movie, and the CGI hurt this movie. The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie came out in 1995. I loved that movie as a kid. That movie has better CGI than this movie. This movie's CGI looks as bad as Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Like, it's trashy CGI. So let's go ahead and talk about the things I like, because I'm gonna go on a rant about this movie. Because the trailer, I just watched the trailer before doing this review. The trailer makes this movie like a horror movie. I thought this movie was an action adventure movie. Two completely different things. Like saying this movie is a horror movie is saying Mortal Kombat 1 is a horror movie. It's like saying Street Fighter is a horror movie with Genghis, I feel like I said his name right, scene. Like, it is not. This movie is not a horror movie. There's nothing in this movie to be like, oh, that's grotesque, that's horrific. Nothing about this movie is going to be like, horror. It's just like, okay, we have people transform into monsters or beast-like people. I don't know. It is like a horror movie to me. And I see why people was upset. I get it. I get it. So the things I liked. The main story. The actors in this movie. I feel like the actors and actresses did a good job. To me, they did. I didn't feel like anybody was faking it. I feel like they actually gave 110% to how wacky this movie is. The music, I don't remember much of the music. Now, the things I didn't like. CGI. CGI's trash. Let's get that out the way right now. CGI's trash, and bits of the story is not that good. Just being honest. Like, for example, Dr. Moreau has a kid who's like one of his top sons. And he immediately betrays the group. Doesn't explain why he betrays everybody, but he immediately betrays them. So you're like, oh, well, why? And then you're thinking that Val Kilmer is the bad guy in this movie, and technically he's not. He's just there. He seemed like an antagonist, David Thewlis' character, but he's not. He is just there, and he gets taken out by the end of the movie, and you're just like, what was his point? And then Moreau, he thinks is a mad scientist, and you're like, okay, well, this guy is obviously the bad guy. He's not. He just was trying to make humans a better, superior creature, and I guess he cracked the case with Fairuza Balk. I probably messed her name up. Fairuza Balk. Maybe he cracked the case with her. We don't know, because the movie didn't explain how regression works. Like, and apparently David Thewlis' character was supposed to be the regression piece why he got picked up. But then at the same time, you think about where all these people come from, how these people got on this island, and then how they get turned into beasts. Were they beasts before they got turned into humans? And then he make them in a lab, so like they're all test-born creatures, and they're gonna regress back to, I don't know. The movie didn't explain what the regression part was and why we should be scared of regression. There's a lot of plot holes in this movie that just doesn't hit right, and you really think about it, you start getting more angry and angry at this movie. I watched this movie a couple nights ago, and I was like, oh, this is fine. And then I started thinking about it more, and I was like, okay, my grade is decreasing because this movie's getting trashier and trashier the more I think about it. There's a lot of plot holes in this movie, and they don't lead, like, pretty much put everything outwards, like it makes sense. Like, part of it, like the main story I enjoyed, like the main story with like the hyena betraying Dr. Moreau because Moreau using like this trigger or this sensor within everybody's implant, everybody go people into shock when he press a button to control them. So they're like, we're tired of being abused, we're rising up. That makes sense. I got behind that. Dr. Moreau told him not to eat people, but then his main guy, who played by Ron Perlman, he's telling everybody to like, who's kind of like the preacher for Dr. Moreau, was telling everybody it's okay to eat whatever you want to eat, then do things which you want to do, everything you want to do whatever you want to do, walk on four legs, you walk on four arms and legs you want to. Like, he was saying like all these things that contradict what Dr. Moreau was preaching. So you're like, wait a minute. So this was already being implanted from the beginning, and they just finally like says enough's enough when one of their own gets killed, and Dr. Moreau doesn't look like them, but now the creatures started to think outside the box and think for themselves. I was really just like, okay, I get the main piece here, but then like, wasn't they betray Dr. Moreau? And then we never seen anything where it showed that Dr. Moreau was abusive to any of his people besides the censor thing. That was the only thing that makes sense. Everything else, like his people he had at his house, didn't show like he was abusive to them. He was just like, they was living there with him. And then I guess Val Kilmer's character would have been the one who really was like saying that, oh, this guy here is the one trying to betray them against Dr. Moreau and he's going to take over. But reality, he didn't. He was just giving them drugs. Because for him, I guess he was like, this is fun and games. I don't get it. I don't get what the side pieces were in this movie. But then you have the storyline between David Thewlis' character and Fairuza's character, where they had some kind of chemistry there or some kind of love interest there, and she was becoming more like the beast creatures, and he was like, well, you know, I'm going to do this for you and try to save you from the regression stuff. And then she turned into a cat and have a cat fight with a bunch of gorillas and warhogs, and then she dies. And you're like, well, this movie doesn't have a happy ending. Okay then. Okay. Curious to see how this turns out. Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting movie. It would be sold as a horror movie, and it's definitely not a horror movie. So you go watching this as a horror movie, you definitely gonna be very disappointed as a moviegoer. But you went into this movie thinking like, oh, action adventure, you're gonna find yourself having a good time because that's what I took it as. And one more thing before I jump into the like creator, directors, writers, and stuff like that, box office. There's a scene in this movie that stood out to me and doesn't make any sense. So David Thewlis's character was trying to escape on a boat, and a bunch of like rats was attacking him. It didn't make sense why those rats was there on the boat, why they were attacking him, and it didn't make sense where they go, where they went from. It was a horrible CGI. It looked like garbage, and you never see those rats again. And I wonder why that was inputted into this movie. For what reason? It doesn't make sense. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. So this movie is an hour and 36 minutes. It's PG-13. A horror movie rated PG-13. I guess he tried. The director of this movie is John Frankenheimer. And the writers is H.G. Wells, who wrote the book, which is The Island of Dr. Moreau. And Richard Staley and Ron Hutchinson did the screenplay for this movie. The box office here and budget. The budget for this movie was $40 million. It grossed worldwide $49 million. So this movie pretty much didn't make its money back. Like $9 million. If you want to count that as a win, they broke even pretty much. The cast, you have David Thewlis, who played Douglas. I thought David Thewlis did fine. I enjoyed him. He kept making these looks and faces every once in a while that were like throwing me off. Like a dude looked lost at all time, no matter what happened. He was like, what's wrong with him? Why he always look lost and confused and dazed? Like, you good, bro? You good? Marlon Brando, who played Dr. Moreau, I thought he was fine. I thought Marlon Brando brought a little cheekiness and comedy to this movie. Val Kilmer, who played Montgomery, he was a jerk. The antagonist, you want to call him, pretty much. You're just a opposite force of size of like opposing David Thewlis. For Fairuza Balk, who played Isa, I thought she did fine. She was okay. She was cool for a character. Daniel Rigney, who played the hyena. You know what? Daniel Rigney gave it 110%. He gave it all to this role in this movie. And matter of fact, he dies a year later after this movie was made. But good for him. Like, he went all in. And Theodore Morrissey, who played Alzello, I thought he did good. I thought he did fine. Like, I thought the actors in this movie worked for me because I felt like they all went in 110%. They went in, they realized how ridiculous this movie was going to be, and it was like, you know what, screw it. We're giving it all we got. We don't care how bad this movie sucks. We're going 110%. So I give them props for that. This movie did have a bunch of different camera angles, which I thought was kind of cool and neat. So anytime you watch this movie, you're going to see different angles, different views, different shot points. But the cast did great. I think that and with the camera angles, it made the cast look like they're doing a lot more than what I guess they could be doing. There could be certain scenes where they just showed you from one angle the whole time, but they didn't do it. There's different camera cuts in this movie. And I'm just going to trail into my last thoughts with that. But the camera angle is pretty cool. The music, you don't really hear much of it. Like, it doesn't stand out. Color, costume design. I thought the costume design for certain people looked good. Like, look like monkeys and creatures, animals. So the costume makeup artist did a good job in this movie. So like something that could be in the 1990s Ninja Turtles movies as far as the characters look. Yeah, I had a good time with this movie. I had fun. Oh yeah, Ron Perlman, by the way, was the sayer of the law. He was in this movie. And that's about it. Is this a Friday night movie? Nah, I don't think so. I think you can save this movie for another day. And grade time. I'm going to grade the movie, The Island of Dr. Moreau from 1996. I'm going to give this movie a D+. It gets a 69% for me. The story, the main story, what saved me for this movie, and the characters and the acting did it save me for this movie as well. It's just like, there's plot holes in this movie. The CGI is not that good. I know it was a 1996 movie, but you know what? We had Mortal Kombat 1 already came out. The Mighty Morphin Power Ranger came out before this. There's other movies that did better with the CGI than this movie. Matter of fact, they didn't need to put CGI in there. They could have just had a movie without CGI. I think it would work perfectly fine. But you know what? It is what it is. Some of the characters' motivations didn't work for me in this movie while characters doing certain things. And then, like, you know, with the whole regression thing, it was kind of necessary. I don't know. It was kind of like, eh. And then the ending, the main ending got me, but at the same time, it's like, there's a lot of show don't tell in this, or yeah, a lot of show don't, no, it's a lot of tell don't show in this movie with certain characters and their motivations. But you know what? It was cool. I had a good time with this movie. I had fun. But yeah, it's definitely a D+ movie for me, 69%. If you seen The Island, Dr. Moreau, what did you think? Please put in the comment section below. Other than that, see you guys in the next episode of Movie Breakdowns, and keep being awesome. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. I really appreciate that. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. If there's a review you want me to watch or do, let me know. Please put it in the comment section below this video. Also, you want to watch the last episode of Movie Breakdowns, it's right there. Just gotta click on it and you'll be able to watch it. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Love y'all, and keep being awesome.